Casey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Frank.
Thank you very
Just,
much.
you're welcome. Letting in all the attendees as they arrive. Still don't have Rep Mashinsky yet, but I'm sure she's coming.
Good afternoon. Rep Brzezinski will join in about a minute. Can you hear me okay, Casey? All right, great.
Yep, we can hear you.
Hey, Casey.
Hello, welcome.
Sorry to be late. Looking for the invitation.
I realized I was like, oh, she might be fumbling for my email. So
Okay, but everybody's on board, right? Everyone is here?
Is
yeah, I think
anyone, is anyone on from the home builders?
yes, I was going to say you should have seen in your email, but because Liz is unable to attend, Jim Paris is acting as her proxy here.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Jim. Could you we're opening this brief meeting, we hope, for the final discussion on items 4 and 5. Jim, you had a proposal.
Thank you, Representative. And just as point of FYI, my name is Jim Paris. I'm the CEO of the Home Builders and Remodelers Association of Connecticut, and I'm here on behalf of Liz Verna, who was unable to make today's meeting. Um, on, as I understand it, this group gathered together and put or tabled 4 and 5 from your topics of vote. The myself and Liz and another representative of the home builders met with Attorney Brooks on Friday and had a conversation about 4 and 5. And to summarize, basically what we did with regard to, if you're looking at number 4 under definitions, pertaining to number 19, we eliminated the words activity related in front of vegetative mitigation measures. And if you want me to just to go on from there, we ended up eliminating definition number 20, the riparian vegetated area. That's not to say that we don't think there should be a definition for riparian vegetated area, and we hope that that happens through the deep with stakeholder input. With regard to number 5, we kept factors for consideration, and if you go down to number 7 in number 5, we amended that to read, the agency may consider whether mitigation measures, if any, would assist in reducing or mitigating the identified impacts of the proposed activity on a wetland or watercourse, provided such measures are consistent with the reasonable use of private property. So our goal there was to take number 7 and make it a little less wordy and a little more specific, which I think we were able to achieve. And then, so finally, going to subsection E, we kept subsection E in, however, it's come to my attention anyways that this group has already voted on the shifting of the burden of proof. So I mean, I would be fine with eliminating number 4 since it's already been voted on. And I would just say, by the way, that we had a great conversation with Attorney Brooks on Friday. She gave us some recommendations. Nothing, I apologize, but I never meant or intended for my communications with this working group to imply that we had any sort of tacit agreement with Attorney Brooks, or that she, is supporting any of these provisions, adjusted or otherwise.
Okay. Could we have discussion from the, did you see that, before we get to that, did you see, Jim, the very recent note from Janet Brooks?
Yes, I did. And that's why I took the moment to actually say that we didn't mean to imply any agreement between us and Janet with regard to what we proposed.
Okay. Could we have discussion from the members of the task force, the working group, on this proposal?
Alicia has her hand up.
Alicia?
Hi, first of all, Jim, I want to thank you, and Liz and, Bob for, your conversations with, Janet, and also for getting back to me about my questions earlier today. I really appreciate it. So I'm just going to take them kind of one by, are we doing this as a package, or are we going to take these things one by one? How are we moving forward on this?
Well, you could just go through with your points of interest, whatever you have biggest problems with. Or if
Sure.
you don't have any problems, you could say that too.
So for the definition, for the vegetative mitigation measures as it was amended, the definition is still problematic, in that the removal of the vegetation itself needs to be a regulated activity, not just associated with the regulated, or associated with a regulated activity. And I feel that, certainly the word identified in front of adverse is very problematic. We've had very in-depth discussions about how, there is a lot of science here on the benefits, not only for prevention of pollution, but also mitigating stormwater runoff, that contributes to flooding, as well as preventing property loss due to bank erosion from maintaining that natural vegetation along our water courses. It's very well established. So I just can't get on board with anything that is going to require that be established. And similar, and I'm gonna save 2E for last. Similarly, E, even with the removal of 4, and Jim, I do appreciate your offer to take 4 out of E. There's a lot of problems with E in general, where I can't take it as a whole or even partially. But what I will say on number 2E, if the last sentence, if evidence in the record of the permit application demonstrates that protection of wetlands or water courses from pollution will be enhanced through such vegetation is removed, as well as the some of that wording tweaked, where we would be using a definition that it defines that the vegetation itself is going to be protected, not the area, because I know we were trying to get away from that. I could be on board with 2E, but everything else, because it still maintains that that level of proof for something. The whole reason why we're doing this is because we know that protecting vegetation along our water courses is going to help tremendously in reducing pollution, mitigating flooding, and minimizing property loss when we have these really short duration, high intensity storms. So that's where I sit with this, but with the understanding of we're doing this in a very short time. So,
Representative, would be just would there be an opportunity to just kind of, I don't know, just add a
Clarify.
point to that?
Sure, if you're clarifying, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, not necessarily clarifying. It's just that, and I agree with Alicia that the mitigation is well established, right? The benefits of the mitigation is well established. And if we are talking about regulating the activity and not the land, I would just argue that it wouldn't be that much of a difficulty then to identify evidence from the record that it would be appropriate, right? And we're not here defining a regulated activity. We're trying to define the um, the vegetated area here. So I guess all I'm saying is that it doesn't seem like it's that much of a burden. We're not trying to identify the regulated activity here, but we're trying to um, demonstrate that simple evidence is needed for a regulated activity to be mitigated. I don't think that's a huge burden anywhere to achieve.
If it was shown through previous research, would that be acceptable to you, or does it have to be shown in each new case?
I mean, if you're talking about evidence in the research pertaining to the regulated activity
To removing vegetation?
or adding it or what have you, right? I think that would be workable.
Because we did have presentations earlier this fall, before the winter, on the effects of leaving the vegetation intact and how much nutrient removal was assisted and how much erosion was reduced. You know, we had all that from other states in New England. And, you know, the question is, do you have to reprove it every single time you come in, or can we just go with the science that already exists?
So in my case, of course, I would rather it be shown with every specific regulated activity because I'm sure it's specific. The consequences or lack of consequences with regard to that activity are specific to the characteristics of the land they are potentially impacting, right? So I could see an argument that it would make more sense to have that demonstrated with each specific permit. But I understand the regulatory expediency in thinking otherwise.
Okay, we have other folks waiting to weigh in here. I think I saw
Denise, is it?
can't get it to come up, but I think I saw Denise Savageau waiting to speak.
Yes, thank you, Representative Mashinsky. So I was one of the people who had a discussion on this and thought maybe we could have a better discussion, um, looking at what needed to be done. The language that's presented, um, I don't think gets to what we want to accomplish with the riparian buffer work group. Our charge is to, increase protection of these areas and therefore increase the commissioners, give them the tools that they need to make sure there was no ambiguity and give them the tools they needed. I see the language here as actually restricting what the commissioners can do. So I'm not in support of that. The one thing that I said I would support, and I think that there's ways for us to do this, is I was interested in the piece that talked about mitigation. How do we use riparian buffers, riparian vegetation in a mitigation perspective? So one of the things I would look at is, and we've done that, we did this with a few other items of the list. What we looked at was kind of scrap the language from the perspective of we're not going to change the statutory language, but we're going to look at guidance. So look at the technical guidance and say, how do we do mitigation? So we already know that there's mitigation that can be offered and, for wetlands and watercourses in general, but how specifically, if we're going to develop a guidance on riparian buffers, how could riparian buffers be used from a mitigation perspective? So that's really the dialogue I was hoping to have, and I have to apologize. The timing for me, some folks know I had to have minor surgery right after our meeting, so I was kind of out of the loop for a couple of days and just back. So I apologize that I couldn't, weigh in a little bit earlier. But I know, but my colleagues, including Janet and Alicia were reaching out. So I'm looking at this time saying, the language I just think doesn't get us where we need to go. I think it's restrictive. I think it doesn't give us that clarity. I think it's the ambiguity, and it doesn't, the one thing that commissioners have asked us for is the tools that they needed to improve, their ability to regulate vegetative cover. And I think we've done that with a lot of the other measures. I see this kind of undermining some of the other work we've done, and I see conflicts between some of this and some of the other things we already passed. So again, I'm looking at saying, let's not change the language, but let's have that dialogue on mitigation. Like I said, that was my priority for re-looking at this, is like happy to have that discussion on mitigation. And I think the way to do that best is to look at it from that technical guide.
Other comments from the group? Frank, DeFelice.
Thank you. So in looking at what was proposed originally and the changes that were proposed by the home builders, I see greatly improved. And I have to say, and I've been doing this wetlands thing for a long time now, I do see clarity in this language. I think it does clarify. And the other thing I will say is that I think even though our charge has to do with riparian buffers, and that I'm fully supportive of, I think we have to remember that ultimately this is going to go before the legislature. And the legislature has a charge, which is probably equally important to them. And so we need to be balanced here. And that charge for them is also to keep housing affordable. Every time that a measure like this goes in, it needs to be looked at and say, okay, does it achieve the goals we want, and does it provide balance? I will be supporting the revised language because I think that the home builders have done a good job in changing that. The original language I did have issues with. What was proposed seems to work for me. I think it would work for any of my fellow commissioners. And so I think this is language that we should consider supporting as a group. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Other members? There are other commissioners on here. Do they have an opinion on?
Francis, I think, is next.
Oh, thank you, Representative Mashinsky. I would second Denise's comments that much of this can be dealt with technical memos or in model regulations. I'm a little concerned when I read this that it was perhaps had some scope creep beyond the charge of this commission. And while there may be benefits to looking at the wetlands regulations more broadly, we really haven't had the time to do so. So I think it would be premature for us to get into areas outside of our charge. I'd also like to point out that housing affordability is a concern. It's a legitimate one, but these are science-based, public health implicating proposals that many other states, 41 other states, have state-level riparian protections, right? So we're really an outlier here. Rhode Island has a great example of regulations for wetlands and riparian areas. And these regulations, while municipalities may not recognize it, they are the means by which the Clean Water Act is primarily implemented, right? Because when you pull aside point source pollution such as WPCAs, the primary contributor to poor water quality, right, in our designated water bodies and courses is non-point source pollution. And so in giving municipalities the tools they need to address this more consequentially, we're also helping meet the state's obligations under the Clean Water Act. I don't think we should lose sight of that because, regardless of presidential administration, they are bit by bit tightening what states have to do. We see that in the increasing costs for WPCA upgrades. Those costs are going to continue to increase. And the more we can do through low and no cost measures like riparian buffer protections, the better. And if there are concerns about housing affordability, there are many other ways to address that, including looking at setback areas that have no basis in environmental science or public health.
I think Peter Basserman was next.
Thank you. Yes, I have concern on item 5, number 7, where we talk about reasonable use of private property for a commission. What would be the legal burden of proof to determine that there was an unreasonable use?
That question for Mr. Paris?
Well, we could start there.
Is Jim still on?
Yeah, he has his hand up, so go ahead, Jim.
I'm still on. I apologize. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the item 5, number part 7, where it talks about reasonable use of private property. What would be the burden of proof to determine that a particular activity involved the unreasonable use?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head. I would presume that there is probably some case law pertaining to that, but I wouldn't know it off the top of my head.
I guess that's problematic for me in supporting item 5.7 then.
I think Mary Pelletier's next, Rep. Maszynski.
Yep, go ahead. You could call on her, Mark. Go
Okay,
ahead.
go ahead, Mary.
I just want to mention with respect to housing affordability that the durability of a housing investment is a critical factor in the long-term affordability. Building houses in locations that science has really demonstrated will become increasingly vulnerable will undermine affordability and the housing stock. And that these measures that we're asking for, which are supported by science, are not just to protect nature, they're also protecting the long-term value of a community. And however awkward this may seem, I want to point to an 1871 letter from Frederick Law Olmsted to Charles Pond, who was at that time the treasurer in the state of Connecticut. And in that letter, he pointed out how the construction of buildings along the tributaries in the North End had degraded the quality of the houses and the community. And he was recommending moving the roads and the buildings away from the North Branch of the Park River, which happened, although they never conserved the North Branch as public grounds as he recommended. And it's this lesson that we move our buildings and our houses away from the riparian zones, and our construction, our development areas has proven time and time again to be valuable for the long-term investment in not only individual houses, but whole communities. Because in cities like Philadelphia and Minneapolis, they've had to go in and remove housing that failed because it was too close to riparian areas. And I just want to emphasize that I know there's going to be a lot of pressure to get rid of environmental laws for the affordability issue. But living in Hartford, I can only, for over 25 years, and having chosen to live in an urban area in order to conserve nature, I can't emphasize enough that we can do better by protecting nature as well as the communities and buildings in high density areas.
Appreciate that. Denise is back on.
Yes, I just want to make reemphasize Mary's point, and that has to do with affordability. When we look at affordable housing and where we want to put it, our most vulnerable people live in the housing that we're trying to build in terms of affordability. And what we don't want to do is put them in areas where not only are they subject to flooding, but subject to mildew, wet basements, or whatever. These are all things that people who are most vulnerable cannot afford. They're the ones who least can afford, like the iffy backyard. So I want to make sure that we're really paying attention to that. And they're the ones, it's one of those things like the people who are more affluent do their due diligence and make sure that their house isn't going to flood and buy in at the top of the hill. So it's about who gets to live at the top of the hill and who lets to give at the bottom of the hill. And because you're at the bottom of the hill, we're going to put affordable housing. That's not what we want to go. So what I'd love to do is put a motion on the table that we don't add the language in 4 and 5, and that instead we put this in technical guide for mitigation, because I think that's the best way for us to handle this. So I'll put that motion on the table.
Okay, the motion is to not include this in the recommendations, but to,
Yeah,
you want to move
yeah,
it to the technical guide?
for mitigation, so that when we talk about mitigation, it's we don't have to change the language. We already have the language we need. I think that this restricts what the agency folks could do. So the motion is to not move forward with the language, but to move forward with putting discussion of mitigation into the technical guide.
I will second that motion.
I second that. Well,
Oh.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll second.
Francis seconded.
Okay, so don't move forward, but to address mitigation in the technical guide. Why are you only addressing mitigation? Do you not want to have a position on the native vegetation that's there first?
I think we did the definition of what I had indicated before. I think some of the other work we did, we have the definition of natural vegetation that we voted on. So there was other
Okay.
things we've already accomplished. So I think that I think that this was kind of starting to get into redundancy with definitions and whatever.
Okay, so so the motion is to not proceed with 4 or 5 and to address mitigation in the technical guide that Deep will produce, I assume. You mean Deep's technical guide, Denise?
Yeah, I think we had, kind of put some different things on them, like give us some guidance on riparian, riparian areas and riparian restoration. And I think using my riparian areas as mitigation would be a good thing to reference in the technical guide.
Okay. Can we have discussion on this motion?
I think Jim is
Oh.
next. Jim Paris.
Jim Paris.
I think I just want to make a statement for the record that, as a representative of the Home Builders and Remodelers Association in Connecticut, I think it's important that commissions are properly tooled, if you will, to conduct their business. With that being said, I do think that the factors and consideration as defined by us in this recommendation achieves that. It is a tool. What we're doing is saying that that any tool should be narrowly tailored. Any regulatory tool that is should be narrowly tailored to the job at hand. I think asking a commission to provide evidence of the record pertaining to the need for corrective action it is not eliminating a tool, but narrowly tailoring that tool. So I would encourage folks to support the measure. And I just want, actually, I'll leave it at that, and we can, continue with the conversation.
So Jim,
Thank you.
you're opposed to her motion? You want to stay with the original 4 and 5?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Her motion
as
is
proposed by the HBRA.
Okay. And then we have Peter.
Yes, one advantage of eliminating 4 and 5 from this report would be that it's so important, as was mentioned, that the commission has the tools necessary to do their deliberations and in proper form. And dealing with this in the technical aspect also allows DEEP to provide the necessary model regulations, given the amount of training that's going to take place with all the commissioners now with the new language and the new statute for inland wetland commissioner training. I think it's a nice parallel to have both the technical as well as the model regs be conducted in the similar time frame, so that we're not needlessly having folk take training and then have to retake some portion of that for a riparian section.
Deep
Thank
is
you.
not online, are they?
Brian's
Yes, I'm
online.
here. Yep.
Do you have a thought on this, Brian?
So I think with the timeline for the training requirements, adding new material with respect to riparian buffers would be difficult to achieve without sort of pushing that timeline back a little bit. But to the point of made earlier that we can develop. I mean, we've already said we'll develop additional model or new model regulations and guidance. We can certainly add mitigation to that guidance. But yeah, just regarding Peter's point about getting all this done before everybody has to get their training done, that might be a difficult time challenge.
So do you have an idea of how long it would take in addition?
I mean, it could be to get a model reg and additional guidance done with stakeholder input. I mean, I would say probably a solid year's effort, perhaps more, particularly if we need to find funding for it.
Okay. Who else do we have that hasn't already spoken? Khaki Wick is uncharacteristically quiet.
Thank you, Mary. I was just about to raise my hand. So we assume that hearing Mr. Thompson's of previous discussion that having additional responsibilities may push back the timetable, but obviously our member commissions really need good guidance on all of this. Going back to Peter's point, with the responsibility coming up with the new training requirements, that's certainly something we'd want to look for. So, Jim, I wanted to first thank you and your association for trying to work with this group. Our member commissions want to continue working with all of your members in reviewing applications. So we appreciate your effort to try to consider all of the potential objections. The one big objection that we have as an organization is the word identified impact seems to come back to some of the language, and we're very concerned about that, regardless of if the mitigation is removed, mitigation sections are removed from this, because that would, as many people had expressed earlier, shift the burden of proof, the burden of responsibility, back to the commissions, and that would really add a very serious additional burden, to our members. But again, we thank you for trying to work with the working group to solve this.
Yeah, I'm wondering if another state has already crafted a model reg that we could steal from, but we'll have to hunt for that before session starts. Bill Lucy wants to speak. Bill Lucy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting back and listening to this, and we're talking about the regulated activity and the impact of 10 feet. And I really don't see this as an impediment to housing development at all, given the initial scope of it. And we still have the upland review area, and the municipalities are able to do what they feel necessary within that area. But what we're talking about initially is de minimis. And CCM was very clear about riparian buffers being a tool in the comprehensive report they came out with last year dealing with flooding and all the damage that we've been seeing in different Connecticut towns. And I really think that we need to focus on that. I mean, I've dealt with flood insurance. I'm sure many of you have. If you're building within 10 feet of a stream and closing everything, clear cutting it down and building right in there, I mean, you're gonna see that in your mortgage payments. I really do not think that this is going to have the impact that I seem to hear being inferred here. And what we really need to do is have a strong baseline that's clear, that's very easy for wetland commissions to start with. And then if we want to put a bridge in, or we've heard descriptions of roads along, we could talk about that. The commission can do their job. They can, look at de minimis impacts or however they want to do it in their town. But I really don't see this as being a development stopper.
Okay, and then we have we have Denise again. And then Frank.
Yeah, just quickly, I wanted to say in terms of the, looking at the technical guide, I was, as Brian indicated, this is just putting mitigation onto all the other stuff we talked about. And if all the other work that we've already done, the work that they're going to have to do is already established. So this is just adding, like, okay, when we're talking technical stuff, we're not just talking about buffer widths or the plantings or whatever. We're basically saying, can we use it for mitigation? So I don't see that adding anything extra to the work. And I do want to remind people that, I think we had a robust discussion. It's probably one of the few things that me and Frank agreed on was that that wetlands, we don't have to have all the wetlands training coming out of DEEP, that the wetlands training could indeed happen the way the zoning training happens. And we didn't really talk about, a legislative change that way, but I do think that that's one of the things we could eventually address. Didn't have to, didn't relate just to riparian buffers, so I think appropriately we didn't get into it, trying to keep our focus on what we needed to do. But I like the idea of looking at the, making sure that Yukon clear, Kakiwik, there's, the Southern Water Conservation District, there's a whole lot of folks who can do training for wetland commissioners besides DEEP. So I just want to put that out there that I don't think that's a burden by all of a sudden saying, and as we're looking at technical guidance, make sure you discuss mitigation as part of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Denise for that comment. I do quite agree with her. We need to find other sources for training. We do it for P&Z. We do it for other things. There's no reason that we shouldn't be doing it here. But what I did want to talk about a little bit was, and I don't know that this is going to change any minds, but I just want to remind everyone around this table regarding the issue of identified impacts. There is no wetlands application that's ever been approved or denied without the impacts. Now, the impacts can be specified. The commission may say what the impacts are. If they don't, and it goes to court, the judge looks to the record. But the impacts are always identified. So using the word identified impacts doesn't change anything that's currently being done. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to vote on this proposal?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
okay.
The vote is to withdraw, right?
Yeah, withdraw
Right.
4 and 5, and instead Denise wanted to, I'm trying to get back to her language. Instead, she wanted to address mitigation in Deep's technical guide, which we just heard from Deep will take another year. So that's the motion. If Mr. Clerk could call the roll on this.
Okay, before the motion? May I?
Who's oh, Jim.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yes, sorry, Jim.
I'm wondering if Denise may be inclined to amend her motion to exclude 7 subsection E from that motion if we eliminated 4 from it. So if we took out the burden of proof, but left the rest of 7E in there.
If you leave 7 though, then you've got identified in there, which Janet Brooks opposed, saying that it would trigger the Riverbend decision again. So we already have a disagreement among some of our advisors on that word identified.
Okay, so in 7, as revised by the HBRA, if we removed identified and kept subsection E, but eliminated number 4.
All right, you're taking out identified.
Yeah. I'm not willing to accept that in terms of myself. The I kind of looked at the language and the work we had done in all of the other things, and we had talked about like how to better help the commission on a number of other things, and I just think this complicates the other language we already voted on. So because we did vote on, factors for consideration. We voted on a whole lot of other things. I think everything that you're talking about is in there. And the one thing, I want to make sure we don't do is limit the factors of consideration that they can add. And I appreciate that they do need to list those. That's one of the things in training. We always say, hey, commission members, you need to say why you're doing this. But that's different than saying identified. Who'd I identified? It's not just the commission identified. So I would like to just leave that language. I think it's really hard to nitpick and do that in a recommendation. So I'm looking at, let's talk about mitigation. I mean, that's what I said I would support. And I was supporting the concept of mitigation here, not the language of trying to limit the commission to certain language. And that's where I'm coming from.
All right, so it's not a friendly amendment as far as you're concerned, and we'll just be voting on deleting 4 and 5 from our recommendations and throwing this to the deep model to solve our problem. Correct? Is that where we're going now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just see if my co-chair has the same understanding. If this motion passes, that ends our items in the agenda. If the motion fails, then we look again at the language.
Yeah. So if Casey's still here listening,
Yes, I am.
if you could call the roll, Casey, we would appreciate it. This
Gladly.
is on Denise's motion.
And just for everyone's information, I assume as before, the agencies will be abstaining, so I'll just be skipping over them. And Jim is filling in for Liz Verna for the home builders. So without further ado, this is roll call on the motion. Rep. Mashinsky,
Yes.
Rep. Anderson,
No.
Jim Paris,
No.
Bill Lucy,
Yes.
Elisa Sharamut.
Yes.
So it's yes. Sorry.
Yes.
Bill Hyatt. Don't think he's on. Peter Basserman.
Yay.
Frank DeFelice.
No.
John Guskowski.
No.
Francis Pickering.
Yes.
Will Henley.
Yes.
Bob Petzold. Joe Jeremiah.
I'm going to abstain, please.
Or Joe Nichols. Steve Miller. That's Steve. Sorry. No. Alan Scalchi,
Yes.
Mary Pelletier,
Yes.
Rep Dubitsky, Rep D'Amico,
Yes.
Denise Savageau,
Yes.
Matt Fitzpatrick,
Abstain.
and Amy Petrus.
Yes.
And just checking, Bill Hyatt's not on. Going once, going twice. And Bob Petzold still no. All right. And next week's the roll, Madam
Can you
Chair.
announce, Casey?
Okay, Madam Chair, the total is. Sure, I'm not missing anyone. Total we have. Oh, okay. We have 11 voting yay, 4 nay, 5 absent not voting, and 5 abstentions.
So her motion passes. I hope that we will continue to work on this even as we get close to session day, to see if there's any possible way we can recommend language perhaps from another state where mitigation has already been addressed. I'm just encouraging people to look around and see if there's language we could take. But the rest of the report is written, except for this. I'll insert this. And Casey, I'm going to send it to you. If you can insert the voting that we did, that would be
Sure.
great. And then the bibliography that we had posted on our site, if you could, just a list of it is fine.
Okay.
And then I'm just going to write the summary, and it's done. And then we'll send it around. If people have if you see errors, you could correct them and send back the corrections, and then it'll be cleaned up. I'm going to be away for a week, so I'm hoping I hope if you have your corrections, you can send them in before I go, which will be, let's see, anytime tomorrow it would be good. But if you'd send the corrections in, if you see any errors, that would be great. And thank you again for participating today and trying to finish our business. We will submit this to the Environment Committee, and hopefully they'll raise a bill and we can discuss further. But thank you for coming back. I know you're sick of this working group. I appreciate your effort to be here.
Yeah, thank you, Co-Chair. Alan has a remark, I think, here, if we can allow that.
Sure.
Yes, I just wanted to thank both co-chairs and all members of the working group, and also just to follow up my initial comment, Jim, your organization, our members really do appreciate your efforts to try to work with everyone to come up with acceptable language. So thank you for what you've done so far, and we'll see what the full Environment Committee does with all of this. On behalf of all of our member wetlands commissions, we appreciate everyone working really carefully to come up with a good approach for this. Thank you all.
And
Thank you, everybody.
I want to wish my co-chair a great trip.
Thank you. I'm not ready yet, but I guess I got to get on the plane sooner or later. Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Thank
you
everyone.
for working with us. And do we have a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a second.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you, everybody, for your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Kate.
everyone.
Agreed.